Welcome to On the Chain. And now, Off the Block with Jeff and Chip.
Hey, this is Chip. We have with us a very special guest. This is Idan Zuckerman. He is the co-founder of one of the coolest blockchain games out there. It's called Upland. And we also have co-host Jeff. Thank you for being here, Idan.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's awesome to have you here. Yeah. So for the past couple of weeks, I've been playing this game. I want to know more though about your background. You know, how you got into developing in this blockchain space. Is blockchain brand new to you? You know, what were you doing before this?
So we are three co-founders in Upland. It's myself, Dirk Luth, and Manny Honingstein. And me and Manny go way back with a previous startup called Rocket Play. We made a social casino game called Lucky Play Casino. It was, pretty successful, top 50 grossing on iOS. Got eventually acquired by a company called AGS back in 2015. And then Manny is kind of like, he's a mutual acquaintance of me and Dirk. And that's how we kind of like, the three of us connected. And Dirk always used to kind of like get us excited about blockchain. He's like the big visionary. He was talking about decentralized economies back in 2012, I think. So he was a pretty big blockchain advocate. And he really got us kind of like hooked on the concept. But then it wasn't until kind of like the coming out of Ethereum and innovative dApps such as CryptoKitties where it kind of like hit us and we said, okay, wait a minute, this could be literally a game changer for games. Like what does this technology, what implication does it have for the gaming space? And we set out kind of like to find, the way to disrupt this space. And this is pretty much how Upland came to be.
So for people that don't know, so for the viewership, Upland, can you just give like a brief overview of exactly what is Upland?
Sure. It's so Upland is quite simply a virtual property trading game that's based on blockchain technology. And people have often described it as kind of like Monopoly meets Pokemon Go meets Minecraft, because it's basically, the base of it is virtual property trading, and the properties are based on real world addresses. And then we have location-based aspects and also creativity aspects that create this kind of like a parallel world or a universe that is kind of like in parallel to the real world that operates with the open economy, a decentralized economy, and where the players enjoy true ownership of digital assets via blockchain technology. But the place where it really gets cool is how we've kind of like taken all this concept and made it like super accessible to mass consumer audiences. So unlike a lot of other blockchain-based games where you need to have kind of like a wallet preloaded with a local currency and kind of like, you need to be really tech savvy to even get started playing. Our mindset is always to address the casual gaming space, and casual players, you can't afford to lose them to friction. And this is basically, we provide a very familiar game interface for any casual player, where you just need basically your email and password to create a sign up. And kind of like we have a proprietary wallet that follows you through all of the clients across all of the platforms, be it web, mobile, or Android, iOS or Android. And it's really simple to onboard, get started to play, but we still adhere to all the concepts of security, decentralization, true ownership, etc., that you would enjoy by playing kind of like the traditional blockchain-based games.
Exactly. So I was the one that turned Jeff onto it a little bit. Jeff ran with it.
I did run with it.
He's hooked.
And now I'm selling my house to buy more virtual real estate.
Right. So he's hooked in it. One of the things that I found right away was this approach you had, like we were talking about with the wallet, because this is the barrier for newbies, right? So I've been around blockchain since like 2013, 2014. But it's really difficult if you get into it. If you start telling people, well, you got to buy it here and you got to send it. The virtual wallet was a really nice touch. Like I was up and running really fast. And that's one of the things that I like about the game. And, when you're a kid, you played Monopoly. This is like Monopoly on steroids, man. This game is, you go off to the races. I go crazy. Like there's a couple places that I want to buy and they're not available yet. And I'm like, when is this going to be available? I want to get it, and they open up here and there. I'm guessing that why did you choose San Francisco to get started with as far as your first virtual city?
I'll tell you the really simple explanation. We are based in the Bay Area, right next to San Francisco. This is kind of like our hometown. And being like a very familiar city also to people outside of, outside of San Francisco and outside of the US, we thought it would be an ideal place to launch a beta program. But eventually we will expand, the game outside of San Francisco to other cities and other parts of the world. One thing to be cautious, though, again, Upland is powered by a real economy that is pretty new for games. There are not a lot of games out there that have a true peer-to-peer economy. Most traditional games that you play some kind of a pseudo-economy where the only participants are the operator and the single player. And then there are multiple instances of that across as many players as there are. Since this is an open economy game, we need to be very careful with kind of like matching liquidity with supply and demand. So our main concern as operators of the game is kind of to keep a stable economy. So not to have too much of an inflationary economy, not to have too much of a kind of like deflationary economy. Just need to keep this stable.
Well, now you're starting to sound like real world problems here.
I was going to say, yeah. now I'm getting stressed out. No, that's interesting. So right now, when you're engaging in the game, you don't really identify that part of it. That's kind of the back end issue. So I assume at some point when you go live, there's going to be maybe an exchange rate for the local currency, so you have a better idea. And I also notice that as you're going in, you're buying properties and you put them up for sale, trying to assess what the right markup on that property should be if you're acquiring it from someone else. I can get into a lot of questions, but I'll stop there and let you.
So you touched about the market value of properties, and we definitely have the algorithms and the ability to introduce that factor to the game. So you could both kind of like assess your current value of your property based on transactions that occurred in a kind of like a growing radius around it. And then also the properties that Upland puts out as newly minted properties for sale, these also will be affected by the market value. Now, the only problem is we need a certain liquidity level to set that off. So because right now our economy is still not big enough to avoid the danger of being manipulated by fake transactions in the market. So once it grows to a certain level where we're comfortable with putting in the algorithms for market value, that's where it will kick in. But I can tell you it's all developed and it's all ready to go into play.
I was going to say, how do you see number one, that game evolving? But I think too, I've been speculating on the cities, like what cities will you open up? Will you go overseas? Will you go to Europe? Will you go to, Miami, for instance, in our backyard, where, right where we are? Just curious. Have you guys given some thought?
I can give you a hint. So we just ran a promotion called the Fly SFO, where we put up the San Francisco International Airport terminals up for sale for the first time. The utility of those terminals are, at the end of the day, I don't know if you guys have seen our 2020 roadmap, but in 2020, we also going to put together a travel system. So if, for example, you would want to go from San Francisco to Tokyo, right? So you can have your Explorer travel via the normal speed that it travels today between properties. It will take you probably a lot of time, ages to get to Tokyo that way. Or you could take a shortcut. You could either take, trains, or if we're talking about Tokyo, probably more realistically airplanes. And to get to those flights, you would need to travel to the terminal, to one of the airports in the vicinity of your Block Explorer. I'm coming to the hint that I offered was that at the beginning, we're going to offer the domestic terminals for sale, and the international terminal is not going to be for sale. So maybe that's the first hint for the first location that's going to be opened outside of.
So if you, so I did get the email on that the terminals were going up for sale. I went and looked. I couldn't find the terminals for sale at that point, so I got to believe it's either pending or maybe it happened in the past day or so.
Yeah, so the way we did it, we ran a really fun competition with our kind of like growing and engaged community. And we just announced today the winner of the first parcel. And then once that winner claims that parcel, that would give access to all of the other Uplanders to kind of like send their Block Explorers to that parcel and potentially acquire.
And start buying. Okay. Yeah. So what happens if somebody owns it and you want to use that as a launching point? Do you now have to pay that owner a fee to utilize the airport?
Yeah, so the way Upland works, so you are represented by a Block Explorer. This is kind of like your game piece in the Upland universe. And to move it around, so it kind of like goes off, wandering off on its own algorithmically. And then if you want to affect its location, you need to send it to either your properties, and you can do that for free, or to other people's properties where you have to pay them an Apex fee, kind of like a rent for utilizing their properties. The same concept works with the terminals. So if you're going to want to go catch a flight, you need to get to the terminal first. And that means utilizing one of the terminals in order to get there. So the terminals themselves, at the end of the day, for anyone who owns them and operates them, would provide a revenue stream of Apex from visitors coming in to the
Nice. And so for the people watching this and listening right now, UpX is the in-game currency, right?
Correct. Yes, it's a token. It's purely a utility token implemented on the EOS blockchain. It is not tradable outside of the game. And this is very important because, again, one of our major concerns and targets was to make a game that is playable in the US and other highly regulated markets, and kind of like, but we still want to be able to offer the players the option to liquidate their digital assets if they choose to. So in order for us to adhere with compliance in places such as the US, we had to make the currency untradeable outside of the game. So you can't kind of like take Apex and just move it around from person to person. But that approach enables us to have the players take their digital assets and put them up for sale for fiat, back for fiat if they choose to, or for crypto, for that matter. So in other words, you can liquidate your digital assets in Upland, or more correctly, you will be able to in 2020, but you're not going to be able to trade Apex for now until regulation permits that.
Interesting. I was wondering about that, the off-ramp. So as you start generating, and I notice it becomes kind of addictive, to the point where you have certain things you need to qualify for. You have to buy properties in certain areas to get bonuses and to get the multiplier. And so and then trying to buy exactly along those corridors, and the prices go up as people acquire, and then you have to search for newly minted blocks that are coming up. I thought it's just really well thought out. You guys set it up.
And again, we're just getting started. So there are tons of features coming up. We actually started naming our releases on the cocktail names. So the next release coming up really, really soon is called Mojito. And where we will introduce treasure hunts, which is going to be ultra fun way to kind of like browse around the city, play, and try to find those treasures. And one of the treasure types is kind of like a piñata that you can kick around and tap around. It's going to be pretty cool. We have tons of features coming in. We're just getting started.
Yeah, and I love the roadmap. You mentioned the 2020 cool. roadmap is pretty extensive. It's really nice for you to share, maybe features, what's coming up, to put that out there so people can kind of get an idea. You may not go that way with everything, but it's nice to see the amount of distance you've covered in a very short period of time, because the game is in beta. But you guys have been moving pretty quick, so you got a pretty strong development team because you're rolling these out pretty fast. Some of these updates.
Yeah, correct. So we kind of like spent 2019 laying down the technological foundations of the game, the foundations for the economy, and kind of like put out. We launched a closed beta back in June of 2019. But again, this was like a bare bone application. I wouldn't even call it a game at that point. But we had people sign up and kind of like buy into our grander vision. And now we were starting to kind of like implement more and more gamification features as we progressed from release to release. And then we go into the open beta. We had a very basic game. We have a very basic game out there. And 2020 is going to be a lot about casting in those very engaging features that the most casual player that comes across the game, if they know nothing about blockchain, nothing about crypto, they're going to be able to grab it and have fun playing it. And that's one of the most important things. We want the game that will appeal to a really wide array of a mass audience. And you mentioned our tech team. I'm absolutely stoked with the people we were able to recruit. So we have currently 2 offices. Our headquarters is in Silicon Valley. And then most of our development team is in the Ukraine. Again, these are our own employees. We don't use kind of like a middleman or an outsourced company. Currently, we have a team of 17 in the Ukraine, mostly developers. And then we are 5 people here in Silicon Valley.
Oh, very nice.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff. I've got one burning question that I've got to know, and it's really important. It's about the llama. So your mascot of the game is this llama, and he's on your shirt. I don't know if people can see that, but it's very cool.
Miles.
Yeah. Does he have a name?
It's great.
Does he have a name? I mean, he's the Upland mascot, but you guys name him? Does he have a name?
Yeah, his name is Miles, or the full name Miles B. Chain.
Nice.
And yes, he is our mascot, and our people fall in love with him. So that's going well for us.
And it's really nice and identifiable. You open up your app, and there he is. You got the llama right there on the header of the app. That's nice. Yeah. I like that. It
how did you arrive at that? Out. How did you, out of all the animals, what?
So who doesn't like a llama, right?
I love llamas.
But I mean, it was actually I wouldn't say by chance, but we always knew we wanted a mascot, and we wanted a friendly mascot. I think it's very important when you think about when you look at the way that you acquire users to try out the game. It's very important to have a character. It creates some kind of like an emotional connection with a potential player about to install your game. So that's one aspect of it. And then from there, we have our brilliant creative director. His name is Jason Festa. He's based here in Silicon Valley. And he kind of came up half jokingly with an origami style looking llama, which is hilarious. I can share it later on I don't know if you have show notes or anything. But and then that was kind of like a starting point, and it was really like a joke, and we all kind of like almost instantly adopted it. And then we had an evolution sequence that took a couple of months. Like you can literally see how this origami 2D llama evolves into what is now Miles Beat Chain. So that was a fun process.
So here's a question. So to give viewers an idea, you log in, you get registered, you can go on as a guest, and you get 3,000 UPIX to start off with, right? But then you have to qualify to become an Uplander, right? There's certain criteria you have to get. Once you get set up and you buy X amount, right? You have to have a value to become a citizen.
Yes, and I can explain the reason behind it. And so again, need to keep in mind we're operating a real economy. And if you take a look at kind of like the casual gaming space, a lot of people try out games, they hang around, they see the value proposition, they don't like it, they quit. So in some casual games, this can be like, you can lose 70% of your installers by the second day after they have installed the game. Now, the problem with real economies is that at the same time, you have to hit those players with the value proposition straight away, right? So you have to give them a taste of the game. You have to give them the taste, in the case of Upland, of true ownership and, like the main mechanics of the game. And the problem is that if you lose then those assets in a real economy to players that don't come back, you've created holes in that economy. So every UPIX coin has a value, every property has a value, and you can't lose it to lapsed players that don't come back to the game. So that's why we came up kind of like with a visitor versus an Uplander metaphor, where when you install the game, we give you bonus points. It's 3,000 UPIX. You can acquire some, very properties that are on the cheaper side. You can get started with the game. And then if you cross the threshold of 10,000 UPIX in net worth, which means a combination of properties and UPIX balance, then you can graduate to become an Uplander. So some people may play the game every day. They can come, they can collect their yield, they can find treasures, they can build that UPIX up to 10,000 and become Uplanders. That's fine. You don't have to monetize in order to become an Uplander in the game. You just need to be engaged enough that we kind of like deem you valuable. And then again, it's not our decision. It's just a choice. It's just an automated choice that gets done by the mechanic in the game. And that allows us to create kind of like an economy of Uplanders that are fully engaged and are bought into the game. And that kind of like helps us avoid those potential holes in the economy.
That's really interesting. So I noticed as I navigated around the game, the map, so I didn't realize there were treasures and things that you can uncover other than you have something, I forget what this part is called. They're the missions where you're, qualifying, you have to... Yeah, and so you have to, buy a certain number of properties on a certain area. I'm working on one. I have to buy 3 properties on Mission Street. All right, I clear everything else out. I'm coming up to a net worth close to 100,000 UPIX. So obviously I've been using it a little bit, but I've noticed that there's people on there with you can look at the other people running around there, and you can see that they have net values of in the millions. All right, so one guy running around with like 5 million. I'm like, holy cow! What did it take to get that started? How much cash did he, someone pump in to start buying properties? What is that? Can you develop big net worths? I mean, this buying and selling and.
There are two ways to get there, like any game, right? So obviously there's the short way where you can just buy Apex coins and you get that net worth,
Right.
and then you can you can play strategically, so you can get access to those valuable properties and then try to flip them, try to sell them for more than you've bought them, and a lot of players have been doing that as well. And then, as we go from release to release, and again, you mentioned Treasure Hunt, which is coming up, literally in a couple of weeks with the Mojito release, where you can just spend time in the game, spend a lot of efforts, and you can build up that net worth in the game. So it's either way. So either you work hard or you take shortcuts, like most other games that are out there.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. So I know I've been running around. I don't know how many properties I have here now. I don't know, 19 or 20 properties, but it's just been interesting. I did all that. I'm looking around. I said, this is really cool. It took me in the beginning, though. I didn't realize that I had to, go and specifically target all those multipliers and, buying in certain areas. So you go out, you start buying up properties. I told Chip I was going to buy his property, but no, but it was interesting. So I liked the concept. I loved Monopoly as a kid. I liked always, buying and selling and negotiating and all that. And I see the same thing here. And I started trying to calculate. You look around, you see what people are selling, and you're like, oh, this person's, they're valuing that property too high. And then you look around, what are the properties? Are there any newly minted properties, or is everything owned where you can maybe mark it up higher? And, it's interesting. Yeah.
And pretty soon you'll also be able to develop your properties and build things on top of them. And again, at the end of the day, we imagine an entire economy operating around that, where people have activities and have games, and one day even open up to third-party developers, kind of like to put their own games on top of Upland. Everything kind of like ties around the concept of there's always going to be an exchange of value between two players at a specific location, where the owner of the location will kind of like enjoy kind of like a stream of that revenue. So that's pretty much our guiding kind of like light where we're trying to go.
How do you determine where you sort of open properties? There's one that I've had my eye on for a while now, and I just checked this to make sure, like, it's still not available. I wanted to find out, like, how do you?
So
Jeff's laughing because he knows the property I want to buy.
As of today, all of the properties in San Francisco are unlocked for discovery, so you just need to get your Block Explorer in there to be able to buy it. There are probably a couple of the bigger properties that are just, so we have some kind of a technical issue with minting huge properties that are more than 1,000 up squares big. And those are still not available for sale yet, but they'll be available pretty soon for sale as well. But today, conceptually, all of the properties in San Francisco are up for grabs, up for minting.
Gotcha. So when you get in and you see that there's just blank, you have the gray squares. So those are the ones that haven't been minted yet.
Exactly.
Do you have to hover your character over that for a period of time and eventually it becomes available? Is that the secret?
Exactly. So as your Block Explorer travels, it leaves a trail of discovery behind it. And any adjacent properties to that trail, if they're unminted, they go into discovered state where you can actually buy them. So if you want to get to a property, you'll need to pay somebody who has a property in that vicinity an Apex fee to travel to their property, and that will give you access to that location.
Hey, you guys really thought a lot into this. It's and that's interesting.
That's the thing with game designers. We tend to overthink things and kind of like.
And it's so what's amazing about him is not a lot of graphic to it. It's just you go around a map, you have some basic concept, you see the other icon characters roaming around, and then you're just looking to buy and start selling. I like the strategic buys and sells. Are you planning on adding more of these multiplier the mission, the collections?
The collections, yeah. So that's a very good question. So again, collections have a very significant effect on how people play the game and the economy. And if you look at our roadmap, so we are planning to add more collections. But I'll tell you, for example, we kind of like found that people, I wouldn't say overvalue, but players give a big emphasis on the ultra rare collections.
Right.
So they kind of like put a very high premium, and that's the thing about open economies. You don't know exactly how they will behave until people actually participate in them. So one of the lessons that we've learned, when we are going to open up the next city, we're going to put more collections in there, but they're not going to all be revealed at once. So we're going to put them kind of like ciphered on the blockchain, so people can be certain that we're not trying to game the market or anything. So everything will be predetermined, but each collection will be released at a kind of like predefined schedule. As kind of like people play the game, more and more collections will be revealed to them. So people can be certain that we as operators of the game are not kind of like affecting the economy by putting in new collections.
It's a fun game, and I hope that our viewers, we're going to put a link down below so you can just click on it, make it easy. But it is a fun game. It is engaging. It's not going to take you long before you start getting off to the races and get addicted, right? It is pretty cool like that. I wanted to find out, so what's the main chief way that you monetize?
We are in the business of creating demand for Apex, the virtual coin, and selling it. That's the way we monetize.
Do you ever see expanding to, because right now it's just a mobile only game, which that is in itself is fantastic. But do you foresee maybe having a web version of it?
Absolutely. So now it is available on mobile web, and you can play it on desktop if you mimic a mobile form factor.
Interesting.
And as we say in the 2020 roadmap, full desktop support is coming. So currently, again, the support is there. It's just not a great user experience to play it on desktop. Once we fix that, it will go into one of the sprints in 2020, and it will be out there.
Where do you see some of the things going? Let's look 2-3 years down the road. What would be a surprise, or where do you think this is going to go that's vastly different from the way it is today?
I can tell you my hopes and my vision for how Upland looks like in 3 years from now. So 3 years from now, I'll be satisfied if there are tens of millions, if not more, people playing Upland. It's open probably in most places in the world. People can kind of like utilize game mechanics that allows them to open up themselves new places in Upland to play it. We have kids running around on bikes trying to catch those treasures. 13-year-olds working hard to get Apex to buy their first properties and flip it in the marketplace, and this thing catching fire. So that's my vision. And to add on top of that, 3 years from now, we would have celebrated our 10th third-party developer that has successfully deployed their games on Upland.
I like that. I definitely see where there's this third-party opportunity. What you guys are building. I mean, it reminds me. I never played the game, but it almost has some semblance of that game Second Life. Mm-hmm. Where you had an entire new economy that grew into it. There were a lot of these online games where there was a new economy that grew in, where you're creating skins and, I forget that the other one, there was another game called Ultima Online where there was an entire economy that developed around it and people were designing, characters, and you could buy whatever. Here I could see, like you're saying, you can build on top of it and it adds a new dimension to what you're building. The most obvious that stands out right away is the Explorer, to have a customizable Explorer. Is that something that you guys are taking on, or is that something that you're waiting for a third-party partner to say, we're going to offer customizable?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, customized Explorers are coming in 2020, and we're going to handle that for players of a certain tier. But then at the end of the day, we imagine that anyone will be able to create custom Explorers as NFTs, and then inside of Upland trade and buy them. You can imagine like brands coming in and, somebody wants to put a Mercedes in there, right? And so another player, maybe he builds a Mercedes dealership where they can, sell those Mercedes NFTs. So it's really kind of like there's like an endless ways that you can go with the ideas and the concepts. And but what's important for us, I think in 2020, we will demonstrate some kind of mini games that you can imagine how they could have been deployed as third-party developers. So we're going to wear the hat of the third-party developer, and we're going to demonstrate how that looks like to kind of like to put a metagame inside of Upland. So you're going to see, I mean, players will be able to envision it pretty quickly by playing Upland developed quasi third-party games, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
It does.
One of the things I was impressed by too is when I first started, I had some questions. I immediately went to your Telegram group, and it was actually one of the players in the game who I started talking about how cool this game was, and I said, you know, we're YouTubers. I'd love to interview somebody from there, and he immediately made that happen. And he has he's looking at starting a YouTube channel called The Market Llama, and I know he's still going into it, but I wanted to give a shout out because I said that I would, and I was really appreciative that it happened pretty fast. He's like, you know, I can put you in touch with the right people, and I was like, this is amazing, and just how responsive the community is. You know, I go on the Telegram group, and instantly I've got help. It was amazing. People had a question, and people were really happy to answer my questions.
Absolutely. We're so stoked to have this incredible community of Uplanders, and I think it kind of like exceeded even our own expectations. But again, this is something that from the beginning we said, you know, we are going to go community first with this approach. When I ran the previous game, the social casino game that I was involved with before Upland, again, there was a community, but it was kind of like detached, and we wanted now to kind of like flip it upside down. So we first had a community, then we had a game, and kind of like that, and we kind of like you know, we are always there for the community. I've been engaged in there. We have Laz, who's our wonderful moderator, who does a great job today. And I think everybody's pretty satisfied with it. So our community is now on Telegram approaching 1,000 players, and it's growing daily. And I'm super stoked to have these amazing people in there.
Well, I would say a big congratulations, because you really put a lot of original thought and put a spin on something by creating this real economy. I just think it's phenomenal. That's one of the reasons we want to have you on. It's always exciting to have a guest on with a product that we really enjoy ourselves, but want to get it out to a wider audience, because it is a lot of fun. And I do think that the growth potential for where this is going could be mind-blowing. If you think your expectations are exceeded now, man, 3 to 5 years, it could really go crazy, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we're shooting for. We're in it for the long run. You know, all of us are experienced entrepreneurs, and we want to build something amazing. All of us come from the passion of just building things and creating companies.
It really is outstanding. You know, I mean, just everything that we're hearing about, everything we're seeing, and I'm excited about it. You know, because it's the first, like we were saying earlier, it's the first blockchain game that I've actually played and interacted with. And, you know, it's like the perfect one. You know, there was what was that, Crypto Kitties way back? Yeah. You know, and then that was kind of silly, kind of, I don't know, it kind of came and went. But
Crypto Kitties, you know, it pretty much paved the road for the rest of the blockchain game. So it may have created an industry, right? And hopefully it did. Again, Crypto Kitties was all about collectibles, and what we learned is that you have to cast this engaging features in there, so people keep coming back to the game and play the game and have fun, and not just collect stuff and try to make money or resell it. And the other thing is, again, just being able to make the game available for mass audiences that don't necessarily know or care about installing wallets, acquiring, you know, either Ethereum or EOS tokens to be able to play the game, et cetera, et cetera. Mass consumers, they want kind of like the convenience of being able to purchase with fiat or sell back for fiat, right. Or, you know, not necessarily go and install complicated wallets in their devices. They want to be able to play cross-platform. So one day I'm in my iPhone, next day I'm next to my computer, right? I can have that tied to a specific wallet that doesn't follow me wherever platform I play. So these are all concepts that are very well known in the gaming industry. And we just, again, our main mission was to solve that and make everything accessible with blockchain to the casual gamers.
Nice. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, your user base really must have grown exponentially over the past couple of weeks.
It
Right?
is.
Have you noticed like a big boom? Because the real estate acquisition, I know when I first logged in, I didn't see this many bubbles, and I surely didn't see that many owned property.
Yeah, so I mean, keep in mind we've only been in open beta for 2 months now. So the open beta started at the end of December, and yeah, things have been booming since then. We're really excited about that. And to be honest, we haven't even begun doing any real intensive marketing efforts. So we did have a couple of PR releases. We did have a couple of appearances in a couple of podcasts like Bad Crypto and others. So it's a lot about also word to mouth and people and our amazing community is spreading around. And again, with the Mojito release that I was talking about, we're also going to have a mechanism that allow you to invite your friends. And if they become Uplanders, you will both enjoy kind of like a bonus for having those friends onboarded. So we're going to also have that kind of like viral option for kind of like expanding the user base as well. So we expect it to be much more, a lot bigger audiences in the coming months.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
That's awesome.
Now, as you guys grow and it kind of develops into others adding components to it, do you see a political infrastructure equated within the game as well? I mean, there going to be certain rules of the land. I mean, I could see certain things happening if you start building other components into it.
Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity for that, and definitely we have the building blocks for making this happen with kind of like a blockchain as the underlying technology. But again, probably the most important thing again to reiterate is this game is still in its infancy, and it needs kind of like a grown-up, an adult grown-up to kind of like supervise it as it grows up. And this is what we serve currently as game operators. So we build the economy with a lot of levers that we can pull, again, with the mindset of keeping the economy stable as possible. And then when the game becomes big enough, then the economy is stable just by its size and kind of like the magnitude of transactions and the exchange of value happening between players. That our hopes is that then we can give that authority to some kind of another independent body, sort of like a central bank that would govern. And now this can be this may be a combination of kind of like self-governance among the players with a combination of kind of like more like a metacratic authority. But the important thing is at the end of the day, we don't want to have that power. We don't want to have the power to affect the economy as operators. We want that to be a third party. And the reason for that is not just because we have some kind of this utopic or kind of like a vision of the future of governance. The main reason is that this type of governance creates trust around an economy. And trust is the most important concept in an open economy. That's the only way it can survive and grow and thrive.
And decentralization as well.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that this is, you're onto something unique. That we haven't really seen in any other space like this. So, and obviously the blockchain component, it's really gives you so many endless opportunities that you seem to have captured in on. I know that I can speak for myself. I'm sure I speak for Chip. We'd be really excited to keep tabs on the project and have you back on as you hit certain plateaus or certain points of interest. With the rollout, especially when you roll out the Mojito. That would be really amazing to have you back on if you'd be open to that and, talk a little bit about what that meant for the community, and then I'm sure we'll have a lot of other questions as we get engaged with it as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back and you guys can ping me. We're all super available and, maybe next interview you can also do with Dirk and meet the other co-founders, either Dirk or Manny. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we can get the whole group on and we can ping all sorts of ideas.
All right, sounds
That'd be great. That'd be great. So before we wrap up, is there any parting words of wisdom that you have? Maybe any little Easter eggs that you want to throw out for people that are playing the game?
Yeah, I mean, I say pretty much stay tuned for Mojito. That's the next big thing that's coming. I think you're going to see some really exciting features. I was to be honest, I was just playtesting treasure hunts just a couple of minutes ago and had my first round of playing a piñata game. And man, this is so exciting. It's so much fun. I can't wait for you and the rest of the community to just see it and experience it. I think it's going to blow people away.
That's great. Hey, Chip, you know, if you want to kind of wrap things up and
yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, again, thanks for having us on. I love the fact that you've got a llama. You know, your Miles B. Chain is his name, or did I get that right?
That is absolutely right.
He's phenomenal, right? So I think you should blow that merch up a little bit because I mean, everybody wants to walk around with that cool merch. You got some of the coolest merch out there, and I also think that it's going to be exciting to see where this game goes. It's fun. I hope that everyone gets a chance to try it. You can learn more about us at onthechain.io. Onthechain.io. You'll see all the content contributors there. And check us out, see what's going on. We're also expanding some of the different places, some of the other decentralized places other than, you know, where most people see us, which I won't mention, but you know where you usually see us. And then, Idan, I really want to thank you for coming on and just having a blast with us, having a chat with us, and you know, as fans of the game, thank you for sharing what's coming up, and we'll keep tabs. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. Thanks.
Cheers, man.
We're out.
Well. Talk
See ya.
soon.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.